Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Wayne Shutsky, the managing editor of the Scottsdale Progress. I'm pleased to serve as the moderator of the Legislative Candidate Forum for Education, which is co-sponsored by two local nonpartisan nonprofit organizations, the Arizona Center for Economic Progress and Save Our Schools Arizona Network. These organizations are collaborating to provide voters with objective and factual information about key public education issues so that they can make informed decisions this election cycle. We'll begin by allowing each candidate up to 2 minutes to introduce themselves and their education platform. For the sake of equal treatment and ample time for Q&A, we'll be keeping time and asking candidates to conclude their remarks immediately when the time limit is reached. As you can see, there's a timer up in the left corner. That's where the white box is. That will be keeping track of that for you. Once the introductions are complete, I will ask 4 questions that were contributed in advance by registered audience members. Each candidate will have opportunity to answer each question in under 2 minutes. And if another candidate's answer directly references you, I can give you the opportunity for a rebuttal at my discretion as time allows, which we should have plenty of time. At the end of the forum, I will ask each candidate to deliver closing remarks of no longer than 1 minute, and we will conclude the forum. Candidates are encouraged to also share their websites and social media handles during that time so that voters can continue to learn about your positions and what you're running on. So with that, we'll begin the discussion. I'm going to allow candidates their 2-minute opening statements using alphabetical order. As a quick note, unfortunately, candidates Joe Chaplik, John Kavanaugh, and Michelle Ugenti-Rita chose not to participate tonight, and Seth Blattman unfortunately had to cancel. So with that, thank you for joining us, and we'll start with our opening statements, first with Eric Kirlin. Chaplik, John Kavanaugh, you're on mute. And Michelle Ugenti-Rita.
Trying to be a good student here. Thank you, Save Our Schools. Thank you, Wayne, for moderating. Thank you, Joseph Romack, for showing up. I really appreciate you being here. My name is Eric Kirlin. I'm running to be your state representative in District 23. I came out here to Arizona from New York to attend ASU and get a finance degree with the idea of going back to New York, working on Wall Street and making $1 million. During that time, I decided to reverse course and go back to school and make a difference. So I became a teacher. I worked for 24 years in the South Scottsdale schools, Title I schools. And it was through that time where I saw what kind of resources we were missing in our schools. And so it became part of my public service to move on to a bigger, kind of bolder place to make a difference for our kids and our communities. And that's why I'm running for your representative. I think that we have gone far too long with underserving our kids. And I think that it is a moral imperative that we educate every kid. And it's actually an economic. LD23.com. Thank you very much, Wayne, and I look forward to having a lively discussion.
Thanks, Eric. Do you want to repeat that web address again? I don't know if it was just me, but your screen froze for a second there, so I want to give you.
Okay. Kirlin23.com. KURland23.com.
Thank you. All right, and for our next introduction, Joe Romack.
Thank you, Arizona Center for Economic Progress and Save Our Schools Arizona Network for hosting this debate. And thank you, Eric Kirlin, for caring enough about the voters of LD23 to attend the debate this evening. While the voters already know the record of Senator Ugenti and Representative Kavanaugh very well, the rest of the field needs to engage with the voters and use opportunities such as this debate to introduce themselves. My name is Joe Romack. I'm a candidate for state representative in LD23. I'm a longtime political activist who has worked with the legislature the past decade, and I can use those skills I've learned to be an effective legislator and hit the ground running on day one. I'm also a former vice chairman of Legislative District 23 and have been working for the best interests of our district for many years. Education is important. It is the cornerstone of career paths that we choose for ourselves. I'm a good example of what a good education can do, being a successful professional engineer for over 30 years. As one of the most engaged candidates running for state representative, I've authored or championed numerous bills. One of the bills I am proudest of was a bill to require cursive to be taught in Arizona. It had sadly been dropped from the state curriculum. I helped push that bill, not only to add back the teaching of a crucial skill set to Arizona students, but to honor my grandmother who taught school for over 50 years and who taught me to write in cursive. I look forward to letting the voters of LD23 learn more about me this evening. And I also want to let the voters know why I'll be such a strong supporter of education when I get elected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Romack. All right, and so now we'll move on to the question portion of the evening. These were questions submitted by registered participants prior to tonight's event, and for transparency for our viewers, know that these questions were shared with the candidates ahead of time. Candidates, please stick to your 2-minute time limit for these, and we will go in reverse alphabetical order to start the first question, and then we'll just kind of flip back and forth as we go. So the first question that we're going to start with is, what resources are needed to have excellent schools, and how will you make sure that every student's public school, especially those from disadvantaged communities, has those resources? Mr. Romack, we'll start with you.
Yeah, first and foremost, the most important resource are the teachers themselves. Our state is in a crisis with the shortage of teachers, and I have ideas to address that. One such example is a scholarship program where the state creates a fund to sponsor students, and they become teachers in the state for a specified period of time. In addition, we must ensure that each classroom has the ability to teach students the high-tech skills for today's workforce. So that requires such things as computers and high-speed internet. This also requires a modern-day curriculum teaching such courses as coding and computer design. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kirlin.
Yeah, when I started teaching about 24 years ago, our funding for Arizona students was 32nd in the nation. We were giving 89 cents on the dollar, so we were pretty close to average, not too bad. When I finished my career to run for this seat, we were 48th in the nation and 66% of average. We are so far out of the mainstream that if we took a statistical analysis, they would drop us off because we were so far out as an outlier. So money is definitely a resource that we need in our schools. I agree with Joe in that teachers are really important. And unfortunately, in Arizona and other states as well, half of the teachers leave within the first 5 years. So we have research that shows, David Berliner down at ASU shows that a teacher reaches maximum efficacy on average right there at year 7, and then flatlines over to year 32, just hovers. We are losing half of our teachers 2 years before they reach maximum efficiency. So I agree with Joe. There is a program out there that Governor Ducey has started. I'd like to see that expanded, where we're rewarding teachers who stay in the state. But I think we also have to look at actually starting out with a program that says, where do we want to be in 20 years? So every 1st through 3rd year teacher gets a mentor. And then perhaps 4th through 10 year teachers, we pay part of their ASRS so that it's direct money into their pocket and they're now vested in the Arizona state system. And then years 10 through 20, we give cheap or actually free higher education so they can expand their knowledge. And then years 20 through 25, we train them through the K-12 Institute in how to be mentors. And then after their retirement, we pay for their health insurance so they can then mentor those 1st through 3rd year teachers. Here in Arizona, we can be the state that goes from hire to retire with the most important resource for our kids, which is our teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Kirlin. Next question we have has a very topical angle to it. So schools at all levels are faced with significant new health and safety challenges right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How will you identify and advocate for the resources needed to ensure healthy and safe schools, as well as the resources necessary to deliver high quality education? Mr. Kirlin, we'll start with you. Oh, I think your screen might be frozen again, no, unless it's just me.
Andy!
There we go. Why don't you take it from the top?
You froze again, Wayne. What's up with that? You got to check your internet connection. I'll let it go this time.
Thank you.
I do know the question. We have to agree that, first of all, we're seeing how schools are so integral to the economy. We all want these schools to open. Nobody more than teachers. They want to be in the classroom with the students. We wasted a lot of time when the legislature went out. They took that recess. They didn't appropriate the correct amount of funds. We could have been outfitting all of our schools with sanitation stations. We could have been getting face masks, or actually, those shields for people that can't wear the masks. We could actually be hiring people that are on unemployment to train them so that we can have more staff cleaning our schools in between the time when our kids are in there. So there was a lost opportunity from leadership. Now that we're here in this spot, we must open our schools, but we have to follow CDC guidelines. So the resources that are needed are still kind of the same things, but I think we have to go a step further. We have to kind of come up with a new code of conduct. Now, whether Mr. Romack believes in mask wearing or I do, it doesn't really matter. The data and the science shows us that it works. And we can't have half of the people wanting masks and half of the people not wanting masks. What I say to people is wearing a mask is being a good neighbor. It's kind of like when you sneeze, Wayne, I'm going to say, God bless you. But I'm not going to say, that doesn't mean you have to go to church. That doesn't mean you have to find religion. It's a nice thing for me to do, whether I believe it or not. So wear a mask out there. Let's get back in school. Let's all of our parents, please hold your students at home if there's any sickness in the house. And let's give a little bit of a break to those people who are our professionals trying to deliver the best education that they can, because this is new uncharted waters. We have to come together as a community. Thanks, Wade.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Romack.
Yeah, the classrooms need to supply the obvious, such as the PPE that Eric mentioned. And the classrooms need to be reconfigured to ensure physical distancing. And each classroom's a unique situation that requires strategic blend of in-person and online teaching. Each school, each classroom is different. So we can't just have a broad plan for all the schools. Each one has to come up with their own unique plan. So it's not up to me as a legislator to decide how schools will teach their students in this challenging environment. But it will be required for me to help supply the funding to pay for these extra unanticipated costs. Sadly, so many legislators voted to sine die this session and not address these issues. This is very disappointing they chose to do this. They should have stayed in session and made sure that the schools were getting the proper funding for equipment, and they could have helped get the equipment to the schools. I'm proud of our Senator DeGenti and her efforts to get the legislature reconvened, but so many others just kicked the can down the road and went on vacation, and very disappointing. And if I'm a legislator, that's not going to happen with me. I'm going to stay. Thank you.
And Wayne, as long as we have a moment here in time, can I add to what Joe was saying?
As long as Mr. Romack, do you have any objections to that?
Not at all. Go ahead, Eric.
I think I agree with him in that I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't anything put into place for distance meeting, right? Everybody else adapted to this new environment. Mm-hmm. We all do the Zoom, right? It's part of our lexicon now. But they didn't have the foresight at the legislature to say, as a legislature, we are important, but if we can't meet in person, we can do it over Zoom. And there wasn't even that effort. So I'm disappointed just as well.
And going back to your point, Eric, the governor's calling all the shots. We have 3 branches of government here, and he should have been held in check. And they gave up that opportunity. One branch of our government shut down during a crisis. Very disappointing. Yep. And we all know the names of the people that did that. And when you're out there voting, and if you're not an LD23, if you're visiting from other LDs, look at some of your legislators. Did they vote to stay in, or did they vote to go home? This is a crucial time to stay in session.
All right, thank you, guys. Next question. We're going to move on to some taxpayer subsidies and things of that nature. So Arizona taxpayers subsidize private schools and private school tuition at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars per year. What is your position on private school tax credits, empowerment scholarship account vouchers, and the emergence of micro schools, which have the result of diverting some public tax dollars for private use?
Well, is this?
Actually, we're going to start with Joe on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I support all the above as long as it gives a quality education. That there's this new concept's been coming up, especially during COVID, about the micro schools. As long as they're giving a proper education and matching curriculum, meeting curriculum, it's a possible option. But one thing if you're against school choice, the first thing you must remember is the money that we're talking about comes from the parents. It was their money. It was never the school's money. It's the parents' money. So you can't lose what was never yours. If families who choose to send their children to go to another school are not taking your money, they're going there with their money. Education dollars are for students, not schools. No district, school, or person is entitled to any money prior to a student choosing where to attend. So I strongly support parents being able to choose the right school for their children. It's their right to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kirlin.
Yeah, I don't know if I so much disagree at all. We are the #1 school choice state in the nation. We lead the league. We have excellent school choice. What we have to make sure is that every school is an excellent choice. So the two things you asked about were basically STOs and ESAs. So for those people out there, the student tuition organizations, it was I think more of a scheme that was passed by the Goldwater Institute. It was ruled unconstitutional at first, and then they went to this third-party provider. It was sold as a way to allow for poor students to go to better schools, which I think everybody wants kids to go to better schools. The unfortunate thing is they didn't put any guardrails in place. So there's no means testing. And for all the time that we have had the STOs, while public school enrollment has grown about 20%, private school enrollment has remained flat. While public school money has increased very little, the private school tuition has increased really greatly. So it's more of right now, it's more of we're supplying money and not enough of it for 3 different school systems. We have a duty to supply a quality public education for the over 1 million kids that go to that route. So I am against the STOs and money going to private schools. As far as the ESAs, I am actually for ESAs in the sense that they go to those kids that are under the IDEA or special education. Again, we don't fund education in Arizona well enough. So until we do, we have to provide a great education for every student. And if that includes $40,000 going to some student that has a private program, then that's what we have to do. The part of the federal law, which is free and appropriate public education, FAPE. I believe in all 4 of those things. So we have to do that. Where I think we need to have some guardrails is how our tax dollars are being used. I think I think everybody wants all of our tax dollars that go to education going to educate students. So that's where I propose we have to put some guardrails in. Thanks.
Thank you. And now a topic that is going to be on a lot of voters' minds, Proposition 208. So this is going to be a 2-part question. First off, do you support Proposition 208, Invest in Education, which would establish a 3.5% income tax surcharge on the wealthiest 1% of Arizonans, raising up to $940 million annually to increase teacher and classroom staff salaries, reduce class sizes, and to more than double state funding for career and technical education. The second part of the question is specifically to the folks that would be your constituents. Do you believe there is strong support in areas like Scottsdale for this measure, considering that LD23 has more households making over $100,000 than any other legislative district in the state? So, Mr. Kirlin, we'll start with you.
Well, I will say that I'll take the second part first. I think it will pass in Scottsdale. I think it will because of what we've seen in the history when schools have had to go out hat in hand every 5 years to get an override. The constituents of LD23 and most every school district that takes part of LD23, whether it's Fountain Hills, Paradise Valley, Scottsdale Unified, have all passed these overrides with double digits. So I do think that our people support quality education and appropriately funded schools. The problem becomes when you look at what we have right now. We have the 2nd largest class sizes in the nation. We have more than 1 out of every 4 classrooms without a qualified teacher. We have we're last in school, in high school salaries for our teachers. So we have to do something. I would have preferred something a little bit different. But now that we're here and it's been 25 years of failed promises to fund education appropriately, this is what we have. So I'll be voting yes for it. I'm not going to counsel other people. That's their own personal opinion. In Arizona, we have something that requires 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and the governor to make any kind of a tax increase. It's not going to happen on my watch. It won't happen on Joe's watch. We don't have those numbers. So anytime you need revenue, you have to go to the voter. So everybody will have one vote. I think that's a system that works. Since I have a little bit of time left on the clock,
Yep.
and you told me I can use it all,
If you want.
I do want to say that we have an economy right now where our revenue stream is overly reliant on sales tax and personal income tax. We have to get everybody to the table. I am tired of hearing the business community say how much they support education, but then every time there's a measure that comes out, they're there with the stabbing in the back trying to kill it. So let's get everybody to the table. We're going to have to lower some taxes. We're going to have to raise some other, but we have to get a revenue stream that's more steady. Businesses like predictability. I do have a finance degree. I know a little bit about it. So thank you for the extra time, Wayne.
Yeah. Mr. Romack.
Yeah, first, Eric, 4 years ago, I passed a tax increase in the legislature, and it got 0 no votes.
Really? What was that?
That was to take away money that was being given to the dog racing tracks.
Oh.
That we were subsidizing greyhound racing, so we killed that subsidy as part of the step. And I helped end greyhound racing. That was one of a two-pronged approach to stop it. So you can do it. It just has to be the right cause. But
one time.
yeah, I was told it wouldn't pass, by the way. So I agree with the premise of a ballot proposition to address issues in the state. It's been used in the past successfully. And in this case, Prop 208 has a right intent, but it's hugely misguided and damaging. While it's supposed to help pay our teachers, the reality is very little of the taxpayer funds raised by this measure will end up in the pockets of educators themselves. Instead, the bulk of the funds will go to administrators and to new unproven programs that have little to do with educating students. There's literally nothing in the measure to ensure these funds are spent in a way that actually improves education in our state. Prop 208 does nothing to help struggling Arizona families, and raising taxes on entrepreneurs will crush an economy struggling to recover from COVID. I will continue to work on increasing education funding in the legislature, but we'll also work on ways to ensure funds get earmarked so teachers get the raises they deserve. They get a block of money now sent to each school district, and it's up to the school district to decide how the money gets spent. And it needs to be earmarked so it goes directly to the teachers. In addition, we need to work to improve the efficiency of our school boards and consider such things as consolidation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romack. Well, that concludes our four question slate. Obviously, a little briefer than we had anticipated, but still want to thank our two candidates for being here and sharing their thoughts with us. At this time, I'm going to give each candidate 1 minute to share their final remarks, and we'll go in the reverse of the last question. So Mr. Romack, the floor is yours.
Again, thank you, Arizona Center for Economic Progress and Save Our Schools Arizona Network for hosting this debate. And again, thank you, Eric Kirlin, for attending tonight. It was a pleasure talking with you and having dialogue with you. Well, we have different positions on how we address education in the state. We all agree that one of the most important things we can do is to ensure our children get a proper education. As I stated before, I know I have the proper skills to be an effective legislator. I understand how the system works at the Capitol. One of the crucial skills is gaining support for legislation, and that includes working across the aisle. One of my proudest achievements was passing a bill with 0 no votes in the House and the Senate when in at greyhound racing. For those Republican voters watching, I ask for your vote. And for those Democratic and independent voters, remember, you can vote for 2 candidates. I ask that you use your second vote to choose me, a candidate who will work across the aisle to get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romack. Mr. Kirlin.
Yeah, and I also want to thank everybody, and especially Joe for showing up. There's another Joe in the race who we really don't know anything about, and I wish I could. I don't want to say anything behind his back, but it seems like I won't be able to ever say anything to his face because he doesn't show up. But the fact that he's suing my opponent here, and he's suing the Honorable Jay Lawrence, who served this state with it's beyond the pale. So you know what? I would really like it if I could work with Joe at the legislature. I like what he said. I like the fact that he wants to reach across the aisle. For me, being a representative, it's not a job title. It's actually a job description. It's a promise, right? And I think leaders lead. And I just like the fact that I can say with absolute certainty that I will work with anybody from any party to move this state forward. And I love the fact that Joe is in the same boat. I think we can take this conversation into another realm. Joe, if you want to have another debate in front of the Republican Club, I'd be honored, and maybe we can get that other guy to show up. So thanks, Wayne, for hosting. I hope if everybody didn't get their questions answered, they'd look up Joe Romack and they'd look up me, Kirlin23.com, and be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you again for both of you for being here. I know we all appreciate your willingness to share your views directly and honestly. Viewers, we thank you for joining us. The full-length videos of tonight's forum will be available on our YouTube page after the event. Remember to mail back your ballot by October 28th at the latest. Voting centers are open for in-person voting as early as October 7th. Look online or post questions in the comments thread if you'd like to find a location. Again, I'm Wayne Shetzky with the Scottsdale Progress, and on behalf of Arizona Center for Economic Progress and Save Our Schools Network, thank you all for being an informed voter.